So I watched a Song of Ice and Fire theory video recently, and then watched a couple more. I haven't fully gone back into the whole, but yeah, I watched a few because I was interested. I saw a particular video come up, and given that there's some strong hints about Winds of Winter, um, I have been thinking about it more. I like A Song of Ice and Fire. It's not one of my absolute all-time favorite series, but I have a lot of respect for it, and definitely I've spent time in the theory hole. I'm not a theory expert. I had to do some research on the ones on this list. Um, I Oddly, I think this one misses a couple of. I think this misses one important one, which I will mention at a relevant point. But yes, I think, or a couple of connected relevant ones, which actually probably are true or partly true. But this has a lot. This is the A Song of Ice and Fire Theory's proofed tier list, last modified 2022. So, what I'll do, our ranks are feasible and awesome, not feasible but awesome, feasible but not awesome, I guess, and oh heck no. I'm going to use I guess, for sort of stuff that you can see there's some evidence for, marginal, or even if it's poor evidence, it's at least interesting, but that I'm not at all convinced by and not very interested in. Oh heck no is the kind of that's dumb or absolutely not is the way I'm going to use this. Let's. What I'll do is I will try to very quickly sum up the theory. This is like going to be full spoilers then, but I'll try to sum up the theory as we go, I guess, and then drop it. So, Jojen paste. We'll start from the top left. This one I don't think I picked up in the book at all. This is a Dance with Dragons thing really, which is that the odd blood-coloured streaked paste that Bran eats, which obviously helps him become a green seer, perhaps, is actually Jojen Reed. And the evidence for this, I think, is quite good. Jojen he knows when his death is coming. He becomes more and more depressed as they get closer to the cave of the Three-Eyed Raven. He he has green dreams. We know this. Part of dreaming how he knows about his death. He has green seer ability, and there's a whole thing where Mira's trying to calm him down. He says, "Look, he's not the one who's going to die." There is some sense, and there's a few other things going on with that. And seems very plausible. What is the weakest point is actually a dramatic point, which is that it seems a fulfillment of this foreshadowing, and certainly plays into some of the cannibalistic themes in the journey to the north and generally in the north. It's a bit of an anticlimax. It's a character you spent some time with and you might like, but it's fairly rare to have this stuff happen fully off stage, and so in that sense, that'd be the weakness. It makes me sad, so it's going to be infeasible but not awesome. Euron assassinated Balon. I mean, I'm not sure if it's awesome, but I think that's surely the case. I actually even forgot to look up this one. Sorry, we'll get to this. Come back to this one. fAegon, that means Aegon Targaryen, being supported by Lord John Connington and the Golden Company, is a Blackfire rather than a Targaryen. So he's from a bastard line who has passed lots of civil wars. And yeah, this is I'm going to say feasible but not awesome. Again, basically the evidence, the single strongest piece of evidence. There's a few. He looks like a Targaryen, but maybe not quite perfectly so. And he is using. There's a few other reasons, but he's using the Golden Company, which was founded by Blackfire supporters. I think there's a few other pieces of evidence, but it seems likely we've been kind of hinted there's a false dragon, and we have very good reason to think that Daenerys and Jon Snow are true Targaryens, and potentially Tyrion as well, which would make sense then that the third dragon, either third Targaryen we see, who is going to try to ride a dragon or be one of the three dragon riders, is false. That would make sense. I'm saying not awesome because I like him, and I assume that means he's going to die. Daenerys is Azor Ahai. This is kind of in the same bracket of who's going to be the fire savior. I think this falls into the category of a lot of these savior theory ones, the Azor Ahai ones, really, where you're like, well, there's something you could say for it, but it's not particularly strong, mostly because the John evidence is stronger, and there's stuff connected to that, again, which actually isn't on this list, surprisingly. John is Azor Ahai. So, yes, here he's set up dramatically to be so. It's possible, by the way, this role is shared, but he's set up dramatically to be so because he's going to this guy who has a sword on fire and has to defeat the darkness. And when I say he kind of is set up to be that, that's the role he's playing in the story in a way that Martin is very, very open about when he's deconstructing the knightly role or myths and legends. So they're not, I'm thinking about, for instance, you find out that Rickard and Brandon Stark were particularly Brandon, were difficult people, not quite as noble as Ned remembers, at least his brother. Robert Baratheon, actually a bit of a disappointment and party to what we all call war crimes. Not the concept exists in pseudo-medieval Britain / France, but you get the general point that there is deconstruction, but it's generally set up in a particular way. Whereas here we're talking about the kind of product of prophecy, and prophecy seems to be a real thing in many respects. And assuming John is resurrected, which I think is pretty certain, then I think we will see. We'll see. That's another mark, by the way. This idea of the the prince who is promised he is indeed a prince. There's all this bloodline stuff to do with coming via Aris and then Rhaegar, probably. So there's lots of stuff going into it dramatically and evidentially, in terms of he's dramatically the hero in that context in the North. In a way, much more than Dany is. Dany's role is a lot more complicated, and he is evidentially set up in lots of ways to be Azor Ahai. Jamie, as much as I like Jamie, he is not Azor Ahai. Sir Pounce, this is a stupid comedy theory. John will be resurrected. Yes. John will not be resurrected. No. I think the point is it's set up functionally that John will be resurrected. Now, and I think it's hinted in Winds of Winter chapter drops. Now, it's possible. You kind of think, oh, what's this fringe possibility? There'll be a big twist because people just stay dead. And you might see this as parallel to Quentin, who some people think is alive but is definitely dead. That is on this list. But the dramatic purposes involved and the setup to pay off and a lot of the other dramatic things and the story of John, it would be, I think, an exceptionally erratic plotting decision for an author whose sort of intertwining plotting is one of his great strengths, to say, oh, I'll throw out that stuff and we'll do a different thing instead, either without John or with, for instance, I think later there's a John is Grey Wind thing. The faces, I mean, yeah, that's I don't actually know if that's like there's some bits and pieces about the Face of Men being a bit difficult. I'll put it there basically because you can imagine it. There are, there's some connection between them and big events in the East, and it would be cool. I'll put Syrio as Jack and Hagar. I think I thought this at the time, and I've become less convinced over time, based on really, I think more or less when I thought about it, it sounds patronising to past me, but more or less I thought, Syrio, he's a cool character, we wouldn't want him to die. This other person comes to mentor Arya. But I think actually it's that Jaqen is a dark reflection of Syrio, because Syrio is kind of just a good guy, as far as we can tell. And Jaqen Hagar at Harrenhal and everyone else is this figure of dark omen, whereas Syrio... The thing is, Syrio is mysterious, and it seems harsh he's written out in the way he is, but he dies for a purpose. I don't think it's harsh. I think it's part of the logic, the cold logic of the world. So no, I don't think that is the case. But I'll put it there because you can see the parallels between the characters, and so there's that scrap. The Maesters, the Grand Maester conspiracy. These guys, the Maesters, are all plotting, or the senior ones are plotting. Maybe they got rid of the last dragons. Maybe they got rid of all dragons. They don't like magic. There's even a point in Feast possibly where there's a kind of like, oh, who do you think killed the dragons? Like they maybe it's because they're men of science and these things offend them. There's different reasons for that, but it's something where there are, without them running everything and without every maester knowing about this, which I don't think there's any evidence for either of those things. A particular thing that the maesters actively work together, senior maesters particularly, to conspire against certain kinds of magic in the world and in favour of their influence. I think that's probably true. Jon is his own father. No, we'll also drop Tyrion is a time-travelling Targaryen fetus in there. No. This one is stupid. And time travel isn't like the idea there might be something like time travel. We'll call it that. Isn't completely crazy in every respect at every time, but these ones fit into a sort of what's the wackiest theory you can come up with? The White Walkers aren't really evil. You can play with the word evil, but I mean by any normal standards they are evil. Jaime is the Valonqar. The fact he has one hand. This is about Cersei getting a prophecy that her little brother will strangle her, and Jaime is actually younger than her. Jaime comes out holding her foot. Tyrion is, of course, younger as well, but Tyrion is probably not her full brother. I mean, does that matter? But also Tyrion. Also, yeah, and I think that's possible, But the argument would be, but Jaime has this particular arc to kind of work out with her, and that's going to end with him with his one good hand, perhaps strangling her. That unless it's absolutely necessary for heroic reasons, Jaime is becoming a very true and perfect knight, and I would suggest that he's not going to do it from vengeance. But yes, it's possible. You can see the dramatic potential there. Jon is Rob's heir. Feasible. It's fairly dull, but it is certainly feasible. This is that Rob legitimizes Jon before he is killed at the Red Wedding, because Caitlin suggests this. In fact, by the way, in this house we don't call her Catelyn because CATE, the split digraph there is an A. So, yeah, Jon is Rob's heir. That seems likely. Oh, sorry, not likely. That seems possible. It's something where one thing is this is partly, and Jon is probably his first cousin, and it's probably legitimate, in fact, so it doesn't need this. But this kind of sets up the idea of, who do the Great Northern Conspiracy think they're going to crown as a Stark king and legitimize Jon Snow? So the two connect. The Great Northern Conspiracy is probably, it's probably true. But some of it we know is that Wyman Manderley and probably some other Northern Lords are plotting to defeat the Boltons and the Freys and the Lannisters, and to restore the House of Stark, perhaps, if possible. And given the House Karstark is somewhat out in the cold, that's not the option. Hence why it would suggest the suggestion is it connects to the idea of crowning Jon. The one caveat there is, of course, it could also be Rickon, who I think, does Wyman Manderley seem to think is on Skagos? Does he know about it, or is it someone else? Certainly, we also have the Umbars, have simply not really bowed the knee, have they? Rhaegar plus Lyanna equals Jon. Yes. Some of these, by the way, I know some of these get better support, but potentially misleading support from the show, and I'm going to try to keep off that. I think there's a few things where you realise just core plot details that are strongly evidenced in the books, then get confirmed in the shows. There's probably, and I watched 4 episodes total. Not my thing on the whole. But the point is that it gives a stronger presumption there, doesn't it? If there's a really strong theory in the books that then gets confirmed in the show, whereas if it's a crazy theory in the books and gets confirmed, you're less likely to believe it. Will be what GRRM does. But I think here, really the whole position of the King's Guard at the Tower of Joy suggests a legitimate Targaryen or member of the royal family is there. The Lord Commander is there. Arthur Dayne. So basically the two senior most functionally, Arthur Dayne being the best swordsman in the country, they are there. So one presumes that, that's the starting point all the way back in book 1. And it goes through all the way, tick-tock, all the way through. Sansa is Littlefinger's daughter. No. Okay, she came out to Caitlin. Sweet Robin is Littlefinger's son. I didn't know about this theory until I was looking at this and looking at it. You're like, oh, okay, that's true. The idea being that Robert Arryn is not John Arryn's son, but Peter Baelish's. Two things. One, John has weak seed, and his other children miscarry or die in very early infancy or something like that. And now, one thing is that Robert is not necessarily super strong either, little Robert. Also, Littlefinger doesn't like him very much, as far as we can tell. But there is that kind of like the seed is strong. We know that Lysa had previously been pregnant by Littlefinger. But the other point is, I think that his hair is brown. Robert Arryn's hair is dark, unlike his blonde father. I think that's from probably his likely real father, Peter Baelish. He is a bastard, though. This one, I'll just do this one quickly. Sam has the Horn of Winter. Jon gives Sam a horn in a Clash of Kings. It seems significant. Is it the horn that will functionally destroy the wall? Maybe. This is one of those really vague ones where it seems like it must be significant, but the evidence is kind of like, hey, he has a horn. What other horns could it be? House Frey, Civil War. Feasible but not awesome. And it could be awesome, things be. But the idea here is that when Walder dies, for whatever reason, there won't need to be a big vengeance on the Freys because they'll annihilate themselves through a civil war between the 3 or 4 major branches based on their marital alliances and so on, and possibly even within branches. I think the idea that whoever the senior guy is now, the heir Edwin, will be challenged by Black Walder and so on, and it'll just go on and on and on. This is not feasible but awesome. Bolton/Roose is an immortal vampire. Vampire is a bad word in some ways, but a good word in others because it's about life-taking. The idea is that the flayed man of House Bolton represents the fact that there is an immortal vampire who basically raises heirs so as to take on their skin and continue to live. And this kind of feeds into some of both the flame, but also the kind of some of the cannibalistic themes in the north. And why, basically, it's chiefly explaining why Roose Bolton puts up with Ramsay when Ramsay Snow/Bolton is crazy and evil. I think just parental indulgence, which is a thing you may see at your local park, is as likely as anything there, isn't it? Southern ambitions, I mean, it's not particularly exciting, but I think my understanding is this is Rickard Stark marrying his sons to Southern ladies, so that he can spread out from the north and become more important and powerful, whereas the Starks are usually stuck in the north. So that seems fine. This one, I'll put it in A, I guess. It's better than, because I think the point is Jon, resurrected, not resurrected, is enough of a hard binary. I've just got to go for it. He'll live on through Ghost as a kind of, does he warg into Ghost when he dies, and that's how he lives on, in a way that Rob presumably did, and in a way that we know, Sansa has wolf dreams of Lady, things like that, and certainly it's possible. I think the point, though, is that the dramatic setup is for resurrection, so this seems less important, but we'll see. This one is, I think this is Rhaegar plus Jen Lannister equals Tyrion, as opposed to, did I notice that it's weird that I think there is no A plus J equals T, which is Aerys raping Jenna, which is reasonably seems like it's evidenced. So let's move on for a second. Poisoned locusts. This, I think, is that Shave Pate is the guy who poisons the locusts at the feast, and it's part of this kind of thing where he is destabilizing the situation in Meereen for all kinds of reasons, and and he has all his own plans, and he's this sort of Varys-like spider figure, and I think this is actually, reasonably fun. Robert Strong is the Mountain, feasible but not awesome. I think this is one of those ones, there's a few on this list that just seem to be confirmed, but without explicitly saying so, and there is a difference, I think, intellectually between the two. One is that's definitely the case, but no one said so. The other is that's not the case, or it could be the case, but we don't know. So yes, I think the fact that there is this mysterious silent guy who seems to be associated with dubious alchemists and all the rest of it, probably true. Clegane Bowl, that Sander comes back to kill the Mountain, presumably, Robert Strong. It's a tough one because dramatically, if Sander is dead, it doesn't work. If Sander is the Gravedigger, which is likely, and that's not a theory on this list, but it is likely, I think. If Sander is the Gravedigger, then it undoes a bit of that arc, unless it is that Robert Strong comes to attack that island at some point, which is certainly possible. So it seems, but it also Sandor fighting Gregor and that being the dramatic end there, putting his dead brother down. That seems like that could make sense, I think. Oh, Euron Greyjoy equals Darren Harris. This is, let's go for not feasible but awesome. I'm not sure if it's awesome, but it's good. Basically, it's not particularly feasible other than that their timelines match up. But the idea that Dario Naharis is an identity adopted by Euron Greyjoy, who may also be Blackraven, that's further down. Bloodraven, sorry. And all this other crazy stuff is that basically Euron is everyone. And this is because the secret identity habit in A Song of Ice and Fire, this kind of stuff is tempting. It doesn't seem at all necessary or thematically pure. The only really nice, this is the bit that makes, I mean, it's a funny theory, as in it's fun in a way the Sir Pounces as ASOIAF is not, I think. It's kind of got this kind of like, oh, wow, okay, imagine element to it. The strongest thing is that Euron seems to think he will just be able to marry Dany, that will just work. And we know he's a magician of some kind. So that idea that, oh, well, if he's actually Dany's lover, then that's why. I think, by the way, some people really don't like Dario. I was like, man, I like Dario. Maybe this shows my my irreformable nature, but I was like, I think most of this is funny. But yes, Dario, Euron is a very strange sociopath. I'm not sure he can do sneaky stuff. I'm not sure he can actually pretend to be someone else like that. I'm giving it more weight than it deserves, but like there's a tempting kind of uber dramatic element to it, but there's no actual reason to believe it's true. Summerhall was two birth dragons. I actually didn't research this, that just sounds true because I think I already thought that. Arbor Gold equals lies. Actually, possibly the idea that Arbor Red and Arbor Gold always cover and presage events. Arbor Red, I think, presages violence. Arbor Gold is basically, in every scene it's in, associated with secret identities and deceit. And that's quite strongly evidenced, and it's a kind of nice, like there is a dramatic token, I think it works. This N plus A equals J is Ned plus Ashira Dane equals John. And I think because we have very strong reason to think it is not that, why is Lyanna giving birth to a child that at the Tower of Joy, guarded by Kingsguard? Which is such a decisive point. Maybe it was Tyrion who's a time-traveling fetus. The point is that unless you indulge in kind of massive loops, it doesn't make sense. There's the question. There is a thing about like did Ashira lose a child, things like that. There are things to do with this that aren't completely adequate, but Ned's involvement, even with that, Ned's involvement is the problem because we get Ned's perspective and Ned does not. There's lots of stuff basically where theories requiring Ned to have done dastardly things completely mistake. It just seems completely mistaking both Ned's character but also the evidence, and by dastardly I mean abandoning her in this case. Also, because he takes John and takes the shame of someone who, maybe is bastard, but may not be his bastard, when he doesn't have to, and when he's presumably previously acted terribly, and he never reflects upon any of this. It's never a problem, apparently. There's this kind of weird thing where we have Ned's perspective, and we have a strong sense of his character that eventually leads to his death, that he is actually a noble man, but in a naive way. And yet there are more than one theory. I don't think there's any else on this list, but more than one theory which require him to be a cad and a bounder. I mean, B plus A, Brandon plus A, I could see, though I don't think there's any evidence for that. Tyrion is the Vloncar. I will go for feasible and awesome. Again, is the Vloncar stuff is kind of here and there. I think this one seems more plausible, almost as if Cersei was always right. That in fact, that Tyrion was a threat to her. You could swap this in the Jaime one, as I've kind of suggested. You can see the kind of way this works. I think here, obviously, it's just that he is the little brother, both in age and also because he's a dwarf, and that they have serious business to solve. You could swap those two, though. Daenerys will go mad. I mean, as a dramatic point, I guess so. Dragon madness, and the show obviously pushes that, which sounds exceptionally dumb. But it's not awesome. It could be done awesomely, I suppose, but essentially, I don't see strong dramatic reasons or strong character reasons so far. So, there we are. Quentin Martell is alive. No, the whole point of that is that this is terrible. It's quite sad that he's dead. He didn't deserve to die, unless stupidity is itself a warrant for death. But the idea that he had, he doesn't enjoy this adventure to the East. The East is kind of an unpleasant place, at least for someone from Dawn, which is basically is that you're like, so you get going to all these kind of grim, humid places that have these kind of quite decadent civilizations, whereas you've basically been living in the south of France or something. So yeah, I think it's just meant to be a bit. It's a deconstruction like some of the other ones, and not everything is a deconstruction in A Song of Ice and Fire, but I think that is a deconstruction of the idea, and it's made clear, I think, that it is. And there's no point in him being alive. It doesn't, if he is alive, fine, but it's going to have to be a very good purpose, and there's no dramatic purpose. Ramsay Khashoggi Theon, again, I think, don't we know this? Sam is the main character. I guess that means he'll save the world. And maybe it's a joke on Samwise Gamgee. I didn't even bother looking this one up. This is a dramatic issue and a structural issue, and Sam hasn't had a chapter for 19 years or something, and hasn't done very much so far, and has 2 books to do it in. The idea that he could be a major character playing a major role is why I put in I guess, because yes, that could make sense. I'll keep that pink letter one for now. Daenerys is a fire white. I think this is the idea that she survives the fire because, in some way, due to magic, Mazda or something, she She becomes a white like the whites north of the wall. I don't think there's really any evidence for that other than the feels. It's not basically in terms of things that happen in a Game of Thrones and the other books. It's not ridiculous, but it's just not evidenced. I will put it no heck no. It's sci-fi post-apocalyptic. There's no magic. Everything is in fact radiation. No. New Aegon is legit. I'm going to generously put this in. Let's go not feasible but awesome. I think actually structurally, it also doesn't work. I should say a reason it doesn't work is the idea that little Aegon escapes. Escapes the mountain, isn't it? And is hurried away by Sir Willem Darry, and not by Sir Willem Darry, by whoever it is in that situation, and escapes, and that's great. One, we have no realistic mechanism of that happening. It doesn't seem super likely. 2, there's the issue of the false dragon and the Tyrion stuff, which I've sided with. And 3, also the idea is that, actually just all these Targaryens escaped. Actually the idea that the second and third Targaryen are set up in these other ways. I would say one thing about Aegon being legit, new Aegon being legit, being superior to Tyrion as the third dragon. One structural dramatic reason is if either Aerys or Rhaegar rape Jenna, and that's how Tyrion comes about, then which is I think the going theory, then he's not legitimate. He's a Blackfire, He has, in that case, the Black Raven, or indeed any Blackfire, in which case the problem is that means, and this is a time-travelling Targaryen fetus or whatever stuff, you come up with crazy things that make it heat, because, by the way, that theory is that possibly something like baby Aegon was sent into the future. That's the theory there. No mechanism available for that either. Generally speaking, dramatically, young Griff is being set up to be the false dragon for various reasons we've mentioned. There is that one reason which puts him and Tyrion on a level, and which creates a problem for that entire way of thinking. In which case, maybe Maester Aemon has to come back and fly the third dragon. Rob was given a love potion. This is obviously theorised in the books, is it not? But I don't think so. I think he just likes Jane and makes a stupid decision. I don't think we have much. This is Joffrey had a food allergy, and that's, people just didn't know about this stuff back in the day. This is something that isn't true, by the way, about medieval life, that people didn't know people had reactions to food of any kind or whatever. That's not true. It's possible, I suppose, if by food allergy we mean he was poisoned for intentionally putting, prawns in his dish or something. I don't know. But it's something which is based on a canard, which probably GRM knows it would be a canard. But also, it's there's better reason to think, particularly that Alan Tyrrell poisoned him in the books. Ned Stark does not walk into a pigeon. No. Rob probably does walk into Grey Wind, which is sad when you think about it. Varys is a Blackfire. So this is the tempting idea, but it's not necessary, especially because he's also interested in Dany. Yeah, let's put it into the... I say there's not actually any really direct evidence that he's a Blackfire, other than that he seems to be connected to people who are Blackfires, and by that I mean to do with John Collington and Griff, young Griff. So there's a kind of problem there where, maybe that's why he's doing this stuff, is because he's a Blackfire. But he's also backing Dany, and Illyrium and Partis is a connection potentially to both. So this seems like a different thing, and it's not completely clear. Is this also a prophecy thing, that they know stuff and they are backing people of Targaryen blood, whoever they may be, of paternal Targaryen blood? There's a weird thing, by the way, there. One of the more common theories, which may even be true about young Griff, is that he is a maternal Blackfire rather than a paternal Blackfire, and that Illyrio is his dad. And this is kind of its own problem because, again, there's things here which I don't mean they don't make sense in terms of, GRM screwed up, but there seems to be some good evidences for believing some stuff, but they don't make complete sense yet. And so there's some stuff there. But I think, there's not strong reasons to think Varys is a Blackfire, but it would help us explain why he does certain things. Olenna poisoned Joffrey. Let's put it in... I'm not sure if it's awesome. It's okay. Here, I think this is the way the show officially took, is it? But it also comes with the amethyst hairnet and some other stuff like that. It seems likely that Olenna, was behind this to do with the way Joffrey acted in general. Joffrey was endangering everything, and not just for her granddaughter. Like, personally, oh no, he's a terrible guy, and that's bad for Marjorie. Poor old Marjorie. But in fact, it's generally bad for the kingdom. It puts the whole kingdom at risk. You've made all this effort through multiple kind of rounds of doing things to get rid of Ned Stark. I think, but you're sorting out other stuff. You're sorting out other Starks. You've made alliances with the south. You basically pacified most of the country with your allies. Haven't got rid of the Starks, and then you've got this nutter, and someone's got to make a decision. And you could say that could be anyone. There are other. I think at the bottom, should we do these ones quickly, because loads of these are the same. Tyrion was the target of the Purple Wedding. I'll just say no to that one. Where are they? I thought there were some others. Maybe they're up here. So for instance, yes, Cersei or Tyrion poisoned Joffrey. We will. I mean, Tyrion could definitely want to come, but I don't think there's no evidence for these, are there? No strong evidence that Cersei or Tyrion poisoned Joffrey. But you can see the logic for why they might, for the same reason Olenna does. But I think the way Olenna is set up, and the amethyst hairnet stuff with Sansa, I think you just got very strong reason to think that's what happened, and that she's doing it to protect her family and the kingdom. Bloodraven wants to take Bran's body. No direct evidence for it, I think, other than that he's a creepy dude. I don't think it's likely because it's Brynden Rivers. He is, I think, he's serving the kingdom. He is the man for the greater good. That means he does terrible things. But it doesn't seem there's any particular reason for him to need Bran's body for that. Someone could come up with that. Joffrey did not poison himself. It was a group effort. You can see there's 5 of these. Plus Tyrion being the target of the Purple Wedding. A Song of Ice and Fire is set in the Lovecraftian universe. It's not. Robert Strong has Jaime's hand, making him the Valonqar. So there's actually a separate thing, which is the idea that because he's one of the sworn brothers, that makes him a brother who could kill Cersei, which is ironically stronger than this. The idea that I guess cause, his hand was damaged, he had a new one sewn on. It's possible. I'm going to put it there because it's something which would just be it would be George putting it out of his rear, I think, to have a cool moment. Baby Rhaego is alive. Not feasible, but awesome. Poor little guy didn't deserve to die, did he? Jeffrey and Tommen are legit. No. Tormund, Giantsbane, and Mage Mormont, I think that's likely. So this is the theory that Tormund says once he raped a bear, and it seems like he's kind of joking, but it's not really clear. It's a bit of a weird story. Mage Mormont has kids who no one knows the father of. Daisy is her heir, and it could be a local custom thing, but it is weird that, there's this whole thing going on where Mage is just a lady on her own, has a bunch of daughters. Alysanne Mormont says that they skin change and can breed. I think she mentions stuff to do with bears in that speech, in that exchange. And I think that's a strong hint that Tormund and Mage are shipped. Yeah. Is this Aerys plus Jenna equals Jaime and Cersei? Okay, we should leave that till we look at that together. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. That's George's prophecy. That is surely right. Ned plus Cersei Lannister equals Jon. That is stupid. Ned plus Catelyn Tully equals Jon. I do not think that warrants the research. Jorah is Azor Ahai is one of these kind of there's loads of stuff you could just kind of stretch linguistic links for. And it's kind of entertaining. I'm not sure it's awesome, so it's not going to go to not feasible but awesome. But it's kind of in that category of that's inventive. No reason to think Euron is not who he says he is. Lemongate. Let's say it is not feasible but awesome. This is the idea that Dany was not raised in Braavos because she remembers a lemon tree and lemons don't grow in Braavos. There's something weird going on with lemons, and I think GRRM did confirm that at some point. Not lemons, but with the red door at Braavos. So Lemongate is maybe more feasible than it sounds. But the basic idea, you just think there's no setup required. There's nothing accomplished via this theory. There's no actually we have a reason to think Dany needed to be raised in Dorne, which I think is the point. She needs to be raised in Dorne because that makes sense for all these other reasons. And maybe there's some sort of time and space travel, I guess. That'd be cool. But you can see there's just this very forced thing going on to the reasoning, the thematic reasoning, the dramatic reasoning, based on an intelligent bit of observation, and that there's something sus about the Red Door. No reason to think Roose Bolton is the Rat Cook. Rob walked. I think that's Intercat then, Caitlin. No. No reason to think that. Red Wedding 2.0 is the idea. I'll put it into awesome. That Thomas Evans Streams is going to sing the Reigns of Castamere as loads of Freys and Lannisters are killed at River Run is the usual site of it, and there's lots of textual evidence to do with, like, it does feed into this quite nicely, the idea that Lady Stoneheart and the Brotherhood, who have infiltrated via Tom Seven's dreams, have infiltrated River Run, and there's all this stuff going on. All these people are gathering there. It's got a moderate garrison, but not an enormous garrison. There's lots of people who want revenge, including people imprisoned at River Run. Is relevant. And the Freys and Lannisters have to get married somewhere, and it might make sense to get married there. So the Red Wedding 2.0 certainly sounds pretty plausible. I think it's not a definite one. If it's interesting, this does not say definite. You kind of need a definite rank for the ones that we know are true, or virtually know are true. This is definitely feasible rather than certain, but it's a good one. Varys' Merman is lots of, he has a slimy smile. He comes up from a well. I don't think we have any reason really to believe that. Euron was a former student of the Bloodraven. Ooh, this is a tough one. I think it's not very feasible, but it is feasible. Here, the biggest thing and the strongest single reason, because there's stuff like, oh, maybe he knows some magic, or maybe he has this, or maybe this would explain how he can do this. All these kind of mad, like, maybe he knows magic this way, could come from Bloodraven. That could be true, but that's not been heavily investigated, like discussed in the books. The biggest thing is actually the strong linguistic link in their name. Crow's Eye versus the three-eyed raven. And by strong, it's not the strongest, but in both cases you have this issue of an eye, and Bloodraven has a red eye. This is the relevant point. His one remaining eye is a red eye, isn't it? In his native form. So the idea that there is a red eye and there is a corvid is quite a strong assonance. It'd be surprising if that were totally coincidental. It's possible, things happen. But though GRM repeats names, absolutely, and thinks it's realistic for there to be people with the same name, obviously, or similar names, here, this is not a name issue. This is a sobriquet issue. This is, kind of connecting people with something people would describe them as. And so I think this feels kind of like there's also not a strong need for it. It's not dramatically necessary, except unless, and I like this element, Bloodraven has screwed stuff up by encouraging a guy, because the other bit of textual evidence is the idea that Euron talks about dreaming of flying, and maybe this does connect us to Bran's dreams of flight. So yes, that's a good piece of textual evidence. It's not dramatically necessary. It is perhaps dramatically desirable for the idea that he has set up this doom of the world via Euron, who's crazy, and has functionally turned up and become the main antagonist of the entire... That's wild, by the way, that Cersei sort of just becomes kind of a weird, nasty person. She's a nasty lady in King's Landing. And that's where we're at on her. And the White Walkers are bad, but they're kind of just the thing, aren't they? Whereas Euron turns up and he's not even like, oh man, he's just like he's like Joffrey or like Cersei or like Walder Frey. He's just this insane force of nature who's just wrecking everything and has gone around murdering his brothers and everything else. Probably used to rape them. That's not a theory, I think, by the way. That is just a textual thing. He's a very bad, creepy, weird guy. And so for Bloodraven to potentially have set up Euron to accidentally set him up to destroy the world, meaning that he then has to get Bran to do stuff to help save the world and to get Azor Ahai going. Lyanna Stark was the Knight of the Laughing Tree. I don't actually think... I think the only time I've ever seen anything about that, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to put it there. Mormont's Raven is being warged, skin changed. Oh, we're going to have to go this way. Yes, by Bloodraven, surely. Untommen is the idea that Tommen's going to have to die, right? And then he'll be raised like Robert Strong, like Gregor Clegane was. And that'd be creepy and horrible. And you kind of think, oh, maybe it makes sense. But I just don't think... I think we're not going to go there. Particularly because one reason this is a theory, as opposed to just he'll die, which is sad. Because he's a nice little kid. One reason it's a theory is because it then sets up Tommen to kill Cersei as a crazy zombie, climbing on a chair or something and strangling her. And no, that's stupid. This is Varys plus Illyrio equals the false Aegon. This is that they're plotting together. I'll put up feasible but awesome in the sense that, yes, the idea that they are plotting together and working together seems likely. The Mountain is a good guy, let's not be silly. Frey Pies. Yes, is this, again, functionally confirmed, isn't it? You know, like the Rat King stuff at Winterfell with Wyman Manderley. I think we know that he has done something unpleasant but fitting. Brynden Rivers is the three-eyed raven. This seems, again, pretty much confirmed. There's a couple of other ones here. I'll come back to this one. I've got some. Okay, so I've got some I actually forgot to look up. So we'll do that on screen. Aerys plus Jenna equals Jaime and Cersei. Rhaegar plus Jenna equals Tyrion. I think, are these not potentially the wrong way round or something? Yeah, I don't know. There are a few missing from here, we should say, that I will not say much more about, other than potentially one theory I heard was that Shiera, not Ashiera, Shiera, Brynden Rivers' sister, half-sister. The idea there is she's alive and she's Quaithe, and there's a bunch of, I think, other kind of like Quaithe-ish theories to do with maybe that, you know, in this case, it'd be that Brynden Rivers is working in the west on Jon, and Shiera is working in the east on Dany, and potentially this connects to the idea that Dany needs to come over and be sacrificed, presumably willingly, maybe unwillingly, by Jon as the Azor Ahai, to enable him to have power. So Alaris is a novice maester in Old Town. He's featured in Feast for Crows and Sam's chapter. He's really one of Oberyn Martell's bastard daughters, Sorella, also Alaris but backwards, undercover as a male novice. However, I still wonder why Sandsnake would disguise as a maester. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, it's let's go for. I mean, I don't really care. Feasible but not awesome. That seems fine. Let's read these. That is, let's say that is, because there's Tyrion coming out of it. That's going to be Aerys plus Jenna equals Tyrion. That seems likely to be true, though it creates some problems for the three dragons. In that case, Aerys or Rhaegar plus Jenna equals Jaime and Cersei is possible. Basically, the thing here is that Jenna has yellow hair, so that could make sense of these things. You know, but then it's not usually the paternal hair. This is the thing of the seed will out, the seed is strong, that stuff. And I don't think we have evidence for Tyrion as something unusual, hence why you get time-travelling Aegon fetus theories. And the idea, I'll add to that actually, by the way, I think the idea there is that presumably Aegon was a dwarf, so whoever got the time-travelling going found a dwarf, and this, but then there's a dead baby, so there's like kind of weird mutated baby Tyrion. The real Tyrion is maybe stillborn or dies soon after birth, but that is then the body that the Mountain smashes up because it's already a kind of weird, heavily damaged child. Whereas, you know, the dwarfish Aegon goes into goes across. You know, either time travels to some point anyway. Is the point to before that time at least to become Tyrion. The reason that's tempting is because there's this weird stuff about Tyrion and about how he acts and about his father's relationship with him, which could be explained easily, but there's just enough weird stuff about it, like enough mentions of something being a bit off, that you start to suspect something weird has gone on, hence the theories. I don't think we have the same for Jaime and Cersei. I'll put it in A, I guess, because you're like, hey, you could have something extra fitting there, couldn't you? Loras isn't that hurt. I don't really know this one, but let's say I think he's hurt. I mean, it's feasible, isn't it? But there's not. The big thing with Loras is he's just been off doing nothing. Let's put him into feasible, but awesome. The thing with Loras is he's disappeared. He storms Dragonstone. He's injured, and we never see him again, and nothing ever happens, and that's weird. But it's maybe not weird because there's only so much space, even in a George R. R. Martin book. And so, yeah. Here we've got some pink letter ones. Again, we have a mass of these. Now, I don't think Ramsay Snow bought it. I think there's interesting stuff that really strongly suggests he didn't send it. This is a letter sent to provoke John, which leads to John being killed, basically, at the end of Dance. And I think the fact that it doesn't seem to be written in blood, and it doesn't come with any. It doesn't come with the Bolton seal, and it doesn't come with any human skin. Apparently, it suggests to me that it is not from Ramsay. Strongly suggests, in fact. Stannis Baratheon, it seems beneath Stannis. There is this idea that maybe Stannis would communicate to Melisandre that way, tell the Red Whore, that's the way of making sure Melisandre knows all the stuff that's happening, and that Stannis needs help. This is the idea that Stannis needs help. Now, as it is, we have some reason to believe, and this is not, out yet, but from Winds of Winter sample chapters, we have more than one reason to believe Stannis wins the battle at west of Winterfell, and around Winterfell. And there's a bunch of dramatic reasons as well to believe that. So that would disqualify it too. Here, these three kind of come together, don't they? And essentially, the pink letter is confusing in terms of finding an author, because you can say, oh, maybe it's Stannis trying to get reinforcements, maybe it's true from Ramsay, or it's not true from Ramsay, and he's just trying to wind John up because he's in a desperate situation for some reason. But the point is, those don't seem strong. The other two, Mance Rayder and Barbary Dustin, I think there's a weird thing where Lady Dustin is like, oh, you should never trust letters. There's not really any other strong reason for Lady Dustin to do it on her own, but potentially there's something like she is... I don't think it's very exciting, but she's working with Mance in some way, so I'll put them both there. This is stuff that I haven't fully sorted in my mind, but I think the basic idea that they, that potentially they're working together, and they've sent off this thing to get John to act. Not to get John killed, but to get John to act in some way. Potentially that. Florence rigged Renly's armour. So Alistair Florent or something like that. Rigged Renly's... Not Alistair. Who's the one with them? Yeah. So, the ghost... So... Oh, yeah. What was going on with this? So, I think... Loris's armour. Garland wears the armour. Book spoilers. Rainbow Guard. Yeah, this one of these things. Some of these are very fringe theories. So, what do the Florents do? Is this presumably something to do with? Yeah. So they obviously don't like the Tyrells, but that's not massively relevant directly to Renly, or rather, they have a potential rivalry with I don't know. So I don't. Yeah, they read. It doesn't kill him though, does it? So who knows? Is it essentially with the fact that Loris gets injured in it, and it's something to do with the? It's been an A, I guess. We'll leave Mance Rayder equals Arthane to last. I don't think he is. I don't think we have any strong evidence directly to think that at all. But we'll look up Stannis's night lamp first. What is the Stannis's night lamp theory? The night lamp theory is how Stannis wrecks the phrase. I wrote a theory a few months back I called the night lamp. A weird thing here about these major theories is you occasionally will find the original post and you'll be like, oh, okay, so Cantus came up with this. The 5-minute version, which includes, I think, some Winds of Winter samples from as far back as 2014 and extra things. So Stannis used to be the master of ships. He was called upon at least once to with people who repeatedly used a trick to purposely wreck ships. They would extinguish the fire from a known good beacon and erect a false beacon. So Stannis is going to use this trick against the phrase. Stannis is currently stuck in a village in the woods between two lakes. His men have been carefully digging holes around an island in one of the lakes. He knows the phrase will approach a certain way, expecting to use narrow land bridge to access the village between the lakes. He'll eliminate the watchtower and raise a new one atop the island. So the Freys will go into the ice fishing holes, and then he'll draw his sword Lightbringer and blind the approaching army, and they'll smash the lake ice. And there's a bunch of evidence, apparently. Yeah, I mean, that sounds fine. Let's go for feasible but awesome. Feasible and awesome. I need to read the evidence properly to really get into that one. I think you can see there's a fittingness. Basically, the idea that an image or idea is brought up. Stannis knows this idea about a false beacon, which isn't dishonourable, by the way, in terms of Stannis stuff. Ruses de guerre are not dishonourable. So the idea that Stannis, this is brought up, and we know that Stannis, something weird is going on to do with what he's doing at the island. So we know that. So great. Now that's not certain, but it is suggestive of. There's a couple of things there that are suggestive of, oh, well, maybe this could recur, or maybe something important is going to happen in terms of how Stannis wins the battle, or at least wins the battle with the Manderley-led forces coming to help him. So yeah, I think that fits. Let's say we're going to put this in not feasible but awesome, and then we're going to talk to finish off. Mance Rayder. I think the point here is Mance Rayder seems very civilized, but then some wildlings are more civilized than others. He obviously has background that is established in the books for that. There's no particular evidence he's the greatest swordsman in the land, I don't think. And the royal blood thing, I guess, is by adoption, so maybe that makes sense. Maybe it's why Lady Dustin would like him. Things like that. But what this actually brings up as relevant is the thing that is not dealt with here. One of the kind of obviously absolute kind of pivotal cornerstone sus things, conspiracy theory laden areas. We've already talked about the Tower of Joy, but the thing with the Tower of Joy, there's a bunch of stuff to do with basically Howland Reed on the one side, and Arthur and Ashira Dane and the sword Dawn on the other side, and the way in which that connects to Azor Ahai and lots of other stuff, and to do with stuff that happened long ago in the East. All these things, the latter half of that is the Starfall theories, which is basically that the sword Dawn is going to be the sword of Azor Ahai, and that, this seems right. I think that there's a point in a video I watched about it made that the screwing around with the time jumps between 3 and 4 or whatever create a problem here that basically, and you end up getting the Dark Star stuck in, possibly to replace Arthur Dane, is he? That sort of thing. Not Arthur, sorry, Edric Dane, as the Dane who could be relevant in the future. But they're doing different jobs, aren't they? Darkstar goes and hurts Marcella, and doesn't seem like he's going to save the world, But there is stuff to do with all this, and some of this is World of Ice and Fire information, but I think we should take that seriously. The idea that the sword, that there was this, in the same way there were Azor Ahai stuff in the East, the fact that there was a sword magical sword forged from stuff that fell from the sky, and that this legend has to do with the sacrifice of someone to fuel the sword or something like that, and that this then helps turn back the night. And Dawn is called Dawn. The sword is called Dawn. It's made from it's much older than anyone who's basically in written history. Is much older than what's been going on in Westeros, really, as far as anyone knows or remembers. And it's made from meteoric iron of some kind, and it's seen as magical. It's not Valyrian steel. This is interesting and should strike us as relevant in the wider context. But the Howland Reed side of that, and this comes into the Mance Rayder equals Arthur Dane side of it. Arthur Dane is the best swordsman in the world, and in the show he dies, and that's fine. I've literally watched the Tower of Joy scene because the Tower of Joy is obviously correctly regarded as one of the great scenes. It also has, there's just moments of kind of some of George R. R. Martin really getting his writing down and just having really poetic exchanges, which actually isn't incredibly common. there are memorable moments, but it's less common than you might believe. But the Kingsguard does not flee. Then or now, we swore a vow. Is very powerful stuff. But the point there is that Howland Reed saves Ned from, I think, from Arthur Dane. There's a separate point, which is that Ned takes the Sword of Dawn and returns it to Starfall, to the castle of the Danes, and his sister, Arthur's sister, who jumps out of the window and dies, grief-stricken. Apparently, Ned then hangs out for a while down there and has this baby. If it's Ned and Ashira's baby, yes, it's sad that Arthur's died, but why is she jumping out of a window? Ned, apparently people like him, and he's not seen as a kind of persona non grata in the area, despite the fact that apparently he may have led to the death both of Arthur Dane, which seems to, that's what people seem to believe, but also of Ashira Dane due to his perfidy. This goes back to the Ned didn't do that. But the point is that he hangs around down there, and he has this baby, and this connects to Jon equals Azor Ahai, obviously, and who has, of course, has Dane descent as well, and is nursed by a Dane wet nurse, I think, isn't he? Or rather, there's a connection there. The assumption is that is the bastard's mother, and in fact, the point is that's probably a wet nurse provided in the south for Jon. So Howland Reed survives, but never turns up, and this is incredibly suspicious. Howland Reed is the only other survivor of the Tower of Joy, and it could be that he simply returns to say, "Oh, I was there," and in fact, yes, it was Lyanna giving birth to Jon. Great, that could be his only purpose. But the fact he's connected to Jojen and Mira, and he sends Jojen and Mira out. The reason I don't think Howland Reed is anyone else, like Howland Reed died and walked into Arthur Dane, or Howland Reed died and Arthur Dane took his place and pretends to be him, is because of Jojen and Mira, and partly the timings and dates, and partly just the kind of the general vibe there. But the idea that Howland Reed in some way is going to be decisive and pivotal, and in some story, I think is probably true. And the fact this does connect weirdly to Arthur Dane and to do with the sword that Arthur Dane no longer wields. I don't know if Arthur Dane's alive, but the reason you might have a kind of Arthur Dane is Mance Rayder theory, and the reason you might have Arthur Dane is Howland Reed theory is the idea that, oh no, he couldn't have died because he's the best swordsman in the world. That's not probably right, is it? That doesn't fit George R.R. Martin's kind of style of these things. But the fact that there is something special about Arthur Dane that we probably need to come back to, and the fact that may connect instead not to Arthur but to another Dane, Edric, the Dark Star, whatever. I think there's something there. And I think Starfall, that general nexus of theories around the Sword Dawn and Jon and the end of the world, I think that's probably right. That is not on here, but yeah. Anyway, that is my tier ranking of all the theories on this particular list and some commentary on them for A Song of Ice and Fire. I know there are a bajillion, bajinty other major theories that are definitely true, so feel free to tell me in the comments your favourites and tell me what you think of what I've done here, and where you agree and disagree. And I'll see you next time.